Hello, Killer Vamp Cat here. So, I'm kind of bored, and I didn't know what to do, and I said maybe I'll make a video, because I'm reading stories, and I might as well read them to people, I guess. I don't know. I'm bored. Okay. So, I was reading stories on Reddit, I think it's called, and I was trying to read scary stories. So, yeah. This one's called My Wife Did Something Really Weird Last Night. My wife and... I wish I had a voice that was like okay to read things to people. My wife and I have been married for a few years now. For most of that time, I have slept on the couch. I snore pretty loudly, and she's a light sleeper, and so it works out best for everyone that I spend my nights on the couch. I don't mind. Our couch is against the back wall of the living room. From the couch, I can see the living room, the kitchen, and the hallway with the doors to the bathroom, the bedroom, and outside. About 3 or 4 times per night, my wife's small bladder gets her up and sends her to the bathroom. The sound of the doors and movement wake me up pretty much every time. Sometimes I say hi, or sometimes I just pretend to still be asleep. Well, last night, something kind of weird happened. It was probably around 2 or 3 in the morning. I was awoken by the sound of the bedroom door opening and closing. And I opened my eye just enough to see the outline of my wife moving in the hallway. I noticed that the room kind of smelled like pennies. But then the bathroom door didn't close. I could hear her moving around very quietly. Then I opened my eye again. She was moving slowly through the living room, stopping to examine every little picture and knick-knack along the way. I figured that maybe she was working her way to the kitchen to get some water and was just being nostalgic or something. I didn't want her to think she had woken me up, as she was clearly trying to be quiet, and I didn't want her to feel guilty. This goes on for what feels like 5 minutes, then what feels like 10 minutes. As we're pushing 15 minutes of her just meandering around looking at stuff, I finally sit up and ask her, "Is everything okay, sweetie?" She turned, looked at me, and froze. She looked like the proverbial deer in the headlights. Her eyes were wide, and she looked paralyzed with fear, like I was some giant monster that had just jumped out from around a corner. "Becky?" I asked. She screamed, or at least she did everything that would be a scream without the sound. It was like she was on mute. But she was clearly screaming. Then she ran. She ran out of the living room, into the hallway, and straight out the front door. Once she had started running, I also got up. She was out of the house by the time I had walked to the end of the carpet, where the hallway began. "Are you okay?" I shouted. I didn't shout. I shouted to the door that she had left open. At this point, I was more confused and worried for her than anything else. I walked over to the open door and looked outside. but she was nowhere to be seen. I began walking back to the living room to grab my robe and shoes, but before I made it back to the carpet, the bedroom door opened and my wife poked her head out. "Did you say something?" she asked. I reassured her that I didn't. I closed the door to the house, I double-checked the lock, and I went back to my couch. I know that I wasn't dreaming. She asked me this morning why I was up, and she said that she swore that I had woken her up by shouting, "Are you okay?" The knickknacks were all a little out of place, and the picture frame that she had been holding when I startled her was still on the floor. I have no idea what happened, but it sure was spooky. I don't think that I'm going to get much deep sleep tonight. Update: I decided to talk to my wife about what happened. Ooh. Okay. My wife did something really weird last night. Part 2. This is an update on a weird thing that a few nights ago. You can find that here. Okay. So after getting so many helpful comments suggesting things like sleepwalking and okay, sit down with my wife, tell her I know I'm gonna get a bunch of words wrong and stuff. Sorry. I don't know what happened, and to see if she had noticed anything out of the ordinary. She seemed simultaneously relieved and worried that when she told me that she had, in fact, noticed something unusual. She is not a normal calm person. She's not normally calm person, and so it was difficult for her to tell me what had happened in an easy to follow manner. I'll summarize it as best as I can. She said that it had happened a few days before the night that prompted me to make the last post. She had been asleep in the bedroom when she was woken up by the bedroom door opening. She saw me slowly walk into the room. At first she thought that maybe I had come to tell her something, but I didn't say anything or sit on the bed like I normally would. She said at that point she assumed that I was just being frisky. We used to have and one of the things okay, that's what I was doing. She never noticed that I had apparently put on a new aftershave, as the room had smelled like salty copper ever since I had walked in, and so she did that, but I didn't pounce. I just putzed around the room, slowly and quietly looking at stuff. I looked at the pictures on the dresser. I looked at and even smelled the clothes in the hamper. Then she realized something. She could very clearly hear me snoring out on the couch in the living room. Oh. She lay there frozen in fear and trying to wake herself up as I continued to creep around the room. I was deliberately being quiet, but I was also definitely interacting with my environment, and that led to the occasional creak or light tap when something was set down. She had a history of night terrors and sleep paralysis as a kid. Sorry for messing up that word. So she figured that was what was going on. At one point she says that she whimpered, and I jumped like I was startled. when stiff went stiff as a statue, and stared at her with a furrowed brow for several minutes before going right back to what I was doing. Eventually I just walked out of the room and closed the door. She's pretty sure that she heard the front door being opened as closed as well. She didn't leave the room for the rest of the night. She had just figured that the whole thing was just a nightmare or an episode of sleep paralysis. It hadn't been worth mentioning, of course, now that I had told her what had happened to me. She's really freaked out. That was definitely not me in the bedroom that night. I've never sleepwalked in my life. She is certain that it was definitely not her in the living room 2 nights ago either. I got to thinking about that smell that both of our experiences had in common. I had definitely smelled it before, I mean, like anyone else. I've given my keys or a handful of change a good sniff a few times in my life, but I'd also definitely smelled it out in the real world before too. I distinctly remember catching a few whiffs of it back in November while deer hunting in the early morning. Around that same time I'd caught it while raking leaves in the evening before I started a nice fire. Sometimes over the winter the inside of the car had that smell in the morning on my way to work. I'd also given it literally zero thought. We've never been burgled, and the area is really safe. Still, we took an inventory of our stuff. There was nothing missing. Everything was value was where it was supposed to be. Of value? Okay. We looked around the house, inside and out. There were no ominous scratch marks along the walls or anything like that. There were no giant monster tracks outside, just the normal deer tracks along the driveway and around the bird feeder. The whole time that I was checking outside, I did have those pricky hair inducing feelings like I was being watched. I chalked that up to my most recent experience and the scary story that my wife had just told me. There were no critters out and about, not even the handful of squirrels that always seemed to be around the bird feeder, so I'm sure that I was alone. Either way, I got myself back inside without dilly-dallying. We checked, closed, and latched all of the windows. The house has 2 doors. The back door is always locked. The front door is never locked because we live way up in the country, and again, it's always been really safe. It's nothing but woods, and I'm confident that raccoons can't work doorknobs yet. We made sure that the back door was locked, and we locked up the front door as well. Some people suggested getting a camera. I'm pretty cheap and lazy, but I'll definitely consider that if anything further happens. I've never had anything spooky like this happen before. We're homebound for the weekend, but come Tuesday I think I'll ask around town and work. Maybe someone else has had something similar happen. Maybe some local teenagers are out stealing underpants and loose change or something. We're going to sleep in the same bed tonight, for her at least. It's going to be a long night. I'll sleep great, especially since I think that her new anxiety will keep the bathroom trips to a minimum. Looks like there may be more to this story. Click here to get a reminder to check back later. Comment, like. That was good. I'm gonna stop the video and find some more, because I love reading these. I'm sure no one likes hearing me read them though. Because I'm sure my voice is like scratchy and stuff like that. I'm sorry. Anywho, bye bye.